passionate storyteller, a mother, and a prolific writer, creating many worlds without running out of ideas. We say hello to Renee Dugan. Renee is a prolific fantasy author, celebrated for her expansive storytelling and dedication to the writing community. With over 15 books to her name, she has crafted many worlds that resonate with readers across many fantasy subgenres. Being captivated by fantasy literature from a young age, she made her mission to create her own stories and to give back all the fun and love she got within those books that inspired her, and remains a guiding light for aspiring writers navigating their own creative paths. So welcome to Writing Inspiration with Markee Books. So Renee, how are you today? Thank you for joining us.
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
I'm happy to hear that. So tell me, Renee, how did it start? When did you become a writer? What sparked this passion inside you?
Well, I started writing from a really young age. I specifically remember being about 5 years old and my mom needing just a little bit of peace of mind for a day. And she gave me a crayon and said, go ahead, write whatever comes to mind. And I wrote a very poorly spelled story about our rather rotund house cat. And that kind of just started something in me, and I really never stopped writing. And I progressed from the inspiration used to be animal stories. I'm a big animal lover. I used to tell stories about my stuffed animals and type them up in way back in the day when it was like Microsoft Office something or another, like one of the first renditions of that. And then progressed up to writing stories about, actual human characters around my early teens. So it's really been a lifelong pursuit for me.
Yeah, that it seems so. Honestly, I'm surprised that you actually went and write words. Usually parents at that age just tell you like draw whatever, and people just make stories with draws instead of letters because they're boring usually for most children.
Yeah. But apparently it was in me from a really young age because they kept that story, and it's actually almost legible, which is really surprising to me too.
What age were you at that time?
I was about 5 the first time I tried my hand at it. And then by the time I hit about 8 or 9, I was writing full stories, which was, every chapter was just one long run on paragraph with no dialogue tags, no quotation marks. But I just felt that love for it from the very first time that I tried. And it has really never gone away in the decades since.
Yeah, I can imagine. So tell me, what genre are you writing right now?
I have been a fantasy writer ever since I really started taking writing seriously. I've never really struck gold in trying. I've tried my hand sometimes at contemporary things like that. Here's my writing assistant behind me. Still write some animal stories, but everything that I write is under some umbrella of fantasy, whether it's urban or high fantasy, epic fantasy. That's really become my wheelhouse.
Okay. So, did you get inspired by the work of another famous author? Do you remember fondly?
Yeah, I really with reading and writing. I went through a phase where I was not really big into reading because I had some delays in developing my vocabulary and things like that. Reading was really hard for me. But when I was around 9 years old, my mom introduced me to the Chronicles of Narnia, and that was like a switch went off in my brain. And so as cliche as it is, I read C.S. Lewis, and then when I was in when I, oh, this is Oh, come here, dude. When I was about 11 years old, my dad told me I had to read The Hobbit as a rite of passage before I went into middle school. And so I did. And then it was Lord of the Rings. And that was really where the love for high fantasy and epic fantasy came from. So even though it's a little cliche to say, like Tolkien and Lewis were really the ones who kicked off that love in me. And then once I got into middle school, I picked up Harry Potter. So then it was, J.K. Rowling and Twilight and just, a lot of the typical big stories really sparks that in me. But when it comes back to it, it's usually Tolkien and Lewis are the ones that I go back to as the the foundation for my love of fantasy.
Honestly, I'm impressed. Tolkien and Lewis are heavy reading. Honestly,
Yeah, and
at that age, I couldn't even grasp what it was. All that.
Well, they definitely made more sense to me once I got older, that's for sure. Like I didn't necessarily understand everything that was in them, but I think the fact that my parents never told me I couldn't understand it, I just assumed that it must be for me, it must be for every reader. And that kind of developed in me this feeling that fantasy should be accessible to people no matter like what age they are or anything like that. And I think that's really shaped my perspective on how I write as well.
I like that approach your parents took, that to not underestimate their children.
Mm-hmm.
Usually,
Absolutely.
most parents do end up doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And current TV shows for children and preschool shows.
Yes. Yes. And just I understand there's a need in some cases to have, certain things that are like in YA books or in adult books shouldn't be for, other age groups. But when it came to like that classic fantasy, just it being so accessible to me and knowing that even at a young age, I could get something out of it, even if I didn't get everything out of it, taught me a lot about writing across, age groups and writing books that everybody can enjoy.
Yeah. So tell me, Renee, what do you do other than writing? Or right now you're a full-blown writer?
Being a full-time writer is definitely the dream, but I am also a mom to a little boy, and I also work for an online Christian ministry as well and run the writing and editing department for them. So my time is stretched a little thin for sure. Writing is mostly kept to within a couple hours in the morning, while I have help with childcare. But I definitely find that those other, ways that I spend my time give me a broader perspective on the subjects that I'm writing. And it also has trained me to make the most of my time writing. So even though I'm not a full-time writer, I will say the time that I am writing is fuller than it used to be.
Well, yeah. I mean, how many books did you publish this year?
Just this year, well, I've got one that's coming out actually at the end of this week, one that's coming out in the fall, and I'm actually doing a quick re-release on a rebrand of one of my series over the summer. So by the end of this year, I'll have 4 that I've worked on marketing and releasing just this year.
How did you stay so creatively inspired?
I don't always. I actually took a break from drafting since I guess it was January that I finished my last draft. I'm trying to learn how to identify when I'm coming up on burnout and take time before I get there. I find that, if I take a couple weeks to a month off between projects and just take that time to read, listen to music, use my free time for something other than writing, I do better. But if I run all the way to full on burnout, it takes me longer to get things done. So I try to carve that time out and I try to make the most of it.
Yeah, that's it. That's true. So do you have other hobbies that help you shaping your style?
Well, obviously, reading, which I feel like is kind of, the unexpected part of, writing. I went on a little bit of break from reading anything that wasn't my own books just because I was so busy, and actually found that my craft suffered a lot from that. So I've been trying to carve out time to go back through and read some of my old favorites, things that have helped me in the past in order to just nail down my voice as an author and make sure that I'm remembering the craft and how to do it, not just drawing inspiration from my own works, but making sure I'm carving space to just enjoy books as they are. But I've also found that video gaming has been really helpful for me over the last decade or so, with seeing different ways of telling stories that's a little bit more immersive than like TV and movies. So, but also, watching shows, watching movies. I mean, it's not really necessarily a hobby, but since it's something that helps me to decompress, I try to make the most of it and focus on games or movies or shows that also work in the craft of, telling a good story, having good characterization, things like that.
Any mention for the gaming
Mm-hmm.
and the movie?
Yeah, I'm one of the series that I wrote back in 2017 was actually really inspired by I was playing Final Fantasy 15 at the time, which had just come out not that long ago. And so
Oh, good game.
just yeah, so trying to focus on just stories that have elements that I relate to in my own writing so that I feel like even, as I'm doing those hobbies, I'm also still feeding my brain and helping my craft.
My favorite is 10.
Yes. It's such a good one. It's so sad I haven't been able to go back and replay it since the first time actually that I played it because I was a weepy mess at the end of that one.
And people always underestimate it, tend to be honest. It's disappointing, even though, because it's so happy-go-lucky. But
Yeah.
but that's the point. The first game was
Yeah.
about tragedy. They finally got a time to breathe.
Yes. And characters need that.
It's supposed to, the characters are now learning to
Mhm.
be normal.
Yeah, after a lifetime of basically, running down the road toward destruction, it things are going to look different if you don't have that hanging over your head, which again, creatively writing craft wise, I think that was a really smart move because it rather than retreading similar ground, I love when sequels, games, books, whatever it may be, where they explore like a different world, the characters going through something different. It to me, that's what keeps it fresh and exciting and different. So
Exactly. That's how it should be, while the characters keep reflecting on what happened before.
mhm.
That's okay. So tell me, when did you publish your first book?
I had kind of a soft debut around 2015, back when KDP or Kindle Direct Publishing was still Create Space. So this was, back in the veteran days, even of Amazon. I just took one of the novels that I written and dropped it on there, and it sold like four copies total. And one of them was to my husband, who read it out loud to me, and I suddenly realized it had so many plot holes that I immediately took it down. So I don't really consider that my official debut. I worked on my craft, got better, and officially started publishing in 2019. So my first official debut came out March 2019.
Oh, then you have like 7 years since you publish,
Yeah, yep. I it's been a long road. Yep.
and and you have been releasing like two per year since then.
That's been the average. Yeah. I did do a rapid release. I can't even remember what year it was now. I guess maybe 2023. I did a rapid release and did three over the course of 6 months, I think. And that was quite an experience. And that, bumped my numbers up a little higher. So I did three over the summer and then one, I think it was in November. So that was a 4 book year. That was rough, but I'm trying to average about two per year. It seems to be a good pace that I can maintain without burning myself out.
I agree. I agree. I think two is enough, especially because you have to left some window between them, so the sales of
Yeah.
one get because usually when writers release two very different books, not necessarily the same series, in too
Mhm.
close one another, usually the latest will steal the sales from the prior.
Yeah. Yeah. And it made me understand a lot more, even just doing that one rapid release. I understood more why in traditional publishing they usually space things out to a full year because it's just the closer together that books come, the slower readers can get to them because they have more material to go through and it's more money, right up front on more books. And so I can see the cleverness of the strategy to do, a whole year between, but I try to do, two a year just because that's what independent publishing thrives on is a little bit faster than traditional.
So tell me, Renee, did you ever thought this life will be, what you have right now as a writer?
I definitely dreamed that it would be. I when I was growing up and thinking about publishing, I always saw myself as, I was going to be some teenage prodigy who got picked up by one of the big five, and like that was kind of the dream for a long time. And then I just shift my dream as I got, into 2018, 2019, learned more about the industry, realized that that wasn't for me. So I never indie publishing wasn't even on my radar. So the specific life that I'm living wasn't something that I had dwelled on or built up in my mind or anything like that. But I will say where I'm at now versus when I started publishing, it's been such a tremendous blessing the way that it's gone and the people I've met. Like I never knew I could make so many friends, not just readers, but friends, and learn so much and be able to help so many people. That part has really been beyond my wildest dreams. It's been so cool.
Do you have any interaction with your readers that you remember fondly?
Oh my gosh, so many. Some of my best friends actually started out as just readers who randomly found me through, running ARC signups for books, and some that were just reviewers who posted their reviews on social media. And I try to make it a point to thank everybody personally, if they tag me in a review or anything like that. And some of those have just turned into conversations that have turned into friendships. And I've had people tell me, that the books came at the perfect right time, and the message in it was exactly what they needed in a struggling season of their own lives. And those ones really stick with me the most, knowing that, books that I often write out of hard places for me, working through, difficult parts of being a writer and just being a person and living in this crazy world, can find other people who are also having similar struggles and give them hope. So those are the ones that stick with me.
Exactly. So most of them were people that were trying to become writers too?
A lot of them, yeah. A lot of my connections were made with writer readers on social media. Some who were leagues ahead of me and already published, and some who were just kind of starting to dip their toes in the water of that dream around the same time that I was. And I'm very blessed that through a lot of learning, a lot of struggling and failing along the way and finding things out the hard way, I've been able to help a lot of my writer friends not fall into some of the same pitfalls that I have. And that's been really made all of the struggle worthwhile.
Are you still a self-published author, or you're already switched to traditional?
I'm still self-published. I still have a hope that maybe someday, I'll end up like some of these people who start off, indie published, and they take off on like Book Talk or Instagram, and a publisher decides to take a chance on them. But I also recognize that my penchant for writing extremely long books that are not necessarily standalone material disqualifies me from some of the things that traditional publishing is usually willing to take a chance.
In that case, I would recommend you to keep going with the self-publishing, but try to hire a PR company.
Oh, that's not a bad idea.
That way, at least they can help you get deals for, shows or other media, etc.
Yeah, definitely. That's a side of marketing that I'm not as good at, is finding, can I get this translated into another language? Can I get audiobook rights in another country? Things like that, a full-time mom, part-time writer, part-time, working mom doesn't have as much time to figure all that out herself. So
by the way, how long is your longest series?
Right now I have a 7-book epic fantasy series that was completed back in 2022, I think it was. So that's my longest one to date, is 7 books. And that was a whopping big investment for sure.
Oh, that's the one you're going to relaunch on October?
No, I'm actually relaunching a trilogy, the one that I rapid released that it did okay, and then it kind of bombed after the rapid release. So I'm re-releasing it as a duology, which was at the suggestion of several readers who said, this would probably be better as 2 chunky books instead of 3 skinny books. So that's the direction I'm going with that one.
Yeah, probably. Are you changing something on those books?
I am. I'm combining them from 3 to 2. So splitting them in an entirely different place. They'll go from, like I said, a few skinny books to 2 chunkier books. But I also have learned a lot about doing covers to market. That's always been something that I've struggled with a little bit, because sometimes the covers that I like are not necessarily going to capture a reader's interest. And that's been a hard lesson I've learned a couple of times with various books. And so I invested in getting new covers for it. And so it'll be coming out as a duology with brand new covers, which will hopefully be a little more eye-catching for readers in a specific genre.
Yeah, that usually helps. And I would recommend you to also make some changes to the back cover description.
Yes.
because that's the
Yep.
second thing they watch after the cover.
Yes, and I definitely found even when I was rereading, I was like, I'm not sure that these blurbs really grab me, so I had to go through, tighten them up, combine some of the plots from the different books as I was skinning it down to, two instead of three. And one of the nice things I think is, at least in terms of Amazon blurbs and things like that, you can update that stuff in a heartbeat if you find that it's not grabbing people. Whereas covers, definitely a little bit more of a monetary investment. It hurts a little more when you realize you gotta redo those. It's tough.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. So tell me, do you edit your own books?
I do not. I actually, one of the people that I met through this publishing journey, is now my best friend. She has a degree in editing, and I have, now going on 15 years of experience, editing as part of my job. And so we actually trade editing services for each other. So that's been very helpful with the budget of independent publishing, which usually editing can cost, thousands of dollars. But I do several rounds of editing on my own, and then she will also do a developmental edit and a copy line edit and proofread for me if I need to. So I try to do it as professionally and in-depth as possible, although there's always typos that slip through nonetheless.
So tell me, Renee, do you have any advice for new writers starting right now?
Starting out, I would say turn off your inner critic and just write whatever sets your soul on fire, because I really believe that the biggest hindrance from somebody going from writer to author is the struggle to not be overly critical of your own work. And I always tell anybody who's like, I want to write a book, where do I start? I'm like, start with what excites you. Like if you're big into like, Fae romance stories, write it. Like if you're big into contemporary romance, write it. Just write what makes you passionate and don't worry about getting all of the craft details right immediately. That's what editing's for. You can always polish a finished book, but you can't publish a book or polish a book that you've never finished. So just start.
Yeah. I will also add that if oh sorry, I lost the idea. I lost the idea. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
In any case, what do you think is the most difficult thing you struggle when you start your first book?
Oh, I would say I don't think I gave myself enough time to know that it was ready. I was actually like changing things and uploading a new file literally on debut day. Like everybody already had their pre-orders, and yet I was like I should have been celebrating it instead. I was just writing more things. And so I think that the biggest struggle for me was just at that time, I didn't know how long everything was going to take, and I didn't know how much time to give myself. So while writing the book itself was easy-ish, the actual act of publishing it caught me off guard in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I can imagine. It really is easy. I guess you receive help of how to do it on one of those groups.
When I started off, there was especially I have done a lot of my like networking and marketing on Instagram, just because it was really the up and coming thing back in 2019. And at the time I only knew of one other indie author. I don't even remember how I found her, but I'd read her books. She had a YouTube channel, so I watched a lot of her videos. But that was the only support really that I had at the time. And I was really fortunate that through publishing my debut novel, I met a lot of people who had more knowledge than me and more skills that I didn't possess at the time. And I did get into some author groups where people were trading information and helping each other and things like that. And I became part of a writing group through NaNoWriMo, which, rest in peace, NaNoWriMo, as of this year. But back then it was, really a big booming thing. And so I was able to find people, but it sort of happened backwards for me, where I found the help after I published as opposed to having people that I was working with beforehand.
Well, it was your first time, so to get in the radar, you have to have something to show. So it's
Exactly.
logical.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is your writing routine? Are you a pre-planner, plotter, or you just improvise it?
Sometimes it depends on the book. A lot of times I go in with a very loose idea. Usually I try to give myself some framework for the first like 5 or 6 chapters of whatever new project I'm going into, because that tends to be by about chapter 5, I will hit my stride and be like, okay, I know these characters, I know this world, I kind of got the cadence of the story down. If I don't have anything outlined, I'll kind of flounder through it and I'm less likely to continue. But I've never been able to be like a full outliner because I find that if I go to the work of like doing a detailed outline, I get bored when I write the books. I'm like, I already did this. Like, I already know what's going to happen. So I try to give myself structure, but space to be surprised.
I prefer to have an outline because honestly, having an outline, even if you don't follow it, it's kind of comforting in some way because otherwise you feel like, out of control and that you'll forget all the details, especially if it's a sequel.
Yes. I will say that with sequels, when I have I'm established in the world and I kind of know that I have different plot threads I need to tie up, then I will start outlining more. And toward the end of books as well, I'll usually pause like somewhere around like the dark night of the soul moment, and I'll outline everything from there on, because otherwise, absolutely, I will lose so many threads and forget what I need to tie up, and then it gets really messy in editing then.
Yeah, pretty much. So, can you tell us a little bit about your books? Maybe tell us the story of how you name it.
Yeah, so gosh, well, with 14 books being out as of this week, it's a lot of books to talk about. But my debut novel, the one that really got me started in all this, it's a standalone young adult portal fantasy, and it's about a girl who is a recent graduate from an insane asylum, and she is trying to live a normal life, and she goes through a portal to a magical, like, sort of horror light circus to retrieve her most precious belonging when it's stolen from her. And she ends up entering a trial of 5 tests against the circus, basically, to try and win back this thing that she's lost. And along the way, she kind of finds out that she has ties to the circus that she doesn't remember and things like that. And it's really a story about kind of not having to conform to anybody's standard of normal, and how it's okay to want extraordinary things in an extraordinary life and to not be what everybody thinks that you should be. So it came to me as a standalone, which was really great as a debut novel. It's a little bit easier to start off when you're asking readers to only commit to, a short fantasy novel as opposed to a 7-book series. So that was really where I got started. And then the name of it is The Chaos Circus, which is kind of an easy title to come up with because the name of the circus that she goes to is the Chaos Circus. So that was a pretty easy title to come by.
Okay. Just for the record, is the circus actually real, or it's just a manifestation of her, mind?
It is real, but the people on her side of the portal definitely frown upon it and don't want it to be mentioned. And when she goes through the portal, things are a little bit different, and the circus is more widely accepted. So it's treated by some people like it's a manifestation of her mind, but it is a very real place, and a very dangerous place, as she finds out.
Well, yeah. You don't go to a place called the Chaos Circus and expect,
An easy time.
Exactly. So, can you tell us a little bit about your other books?
Yeah, so I have the 7-book series, which is the Star Chaser saga. And it's very much a love letter to those fantasy novels I grew up on, very much inspired by my love of Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia. So it's very high fantasy, epic quests, dragons, things like that. And that follows a princess who goes on a quest to try and get allies from a neighboring kingdom to save her people from war. And she finds out that there's a lot more to these other kingdoms than she predicted, and it's sort of tied into her family's past. And it's really a story of her learning to become a leader and a fighter and sort of coming into her own. So it's a little more of like a coming of age fantasy. And then the trilogy that I'm about to re-release is a duology, is called The Curse of the Blessed, and it's much more like fantasy political intrigue. So it's more plot focused, a lot of like murder and espionage and assassins and dueling, heirs for different powers and things like that. And that one is actually is adult, so it's not spicy, but it's got a little bit more like grim themes to it and things like that. And then the series I'm currently releasing is Tales of Wonder and Woe, and it is a series of interconnected standalones that take place in a world where actually storytelling is a form of magic. And so each book follows a different main character and her love interest as they're going through the different struggles in this world that's touched by storytelling magic. So that one's been really fun to work on.
Okay, that sounds interesting. So, have you ever worked on other genres?
I've dabbled a little bit. I've tried like, I don't know if it would count as fantasy per se. I've tried like superhero stories. I've tried my hand a little bit at steampunk. I've
I
had
count
ideas for
superheroes
contemporary.
more in sci-fi.
Yeah, that's kind of that. I would say so, because even though it was in like a different world, not our world, it was much more of like a modern, techie kind of. When I was big into my Marvel and DC phase, that was when that story came out. So, or came up for me, I should say. It never actually amounted to anything, but I've dabbled so in different genres and had ideas even for like middle grade and things like that. But other than drafting some children's books for my job that I do in ministry work, I've just found that nothing satisfies my soul like creating a fantasy world and just getting lost in it.
Yeah, it is a great experience. I
Yeah.
understand that. So, between all of those books, what do you think is like your favorite?
I would say like all of them stacked together. Probably the first book in Tales of Wonder of the Tales and Wonder and Woe series. It's called A Story Spun in Scarlet. Um, and that one is just really special to me because I wrote it at a time where I had not been able to finish a new work in progress, a new draft of anything in a really long time. And I was really struggling with feeling like I might never finish another book again, and maybe this was like the end of my career. And so finally, just sort of in a fit of like desperation, I decided to start with no outline, no nothing. I was like, I'm just going to start writing a story about a main character who lives in a world full of storytelling magic where all the stories have lost their endings and no one knows why. And that book it almost wrote itself in a lot of ways. It was one of the easiest writing experiences I've ever had, just start to finish. And to put so much of like my own experience and the struggles I was having on the page, just made that book really special to me. And the feedback that I've heard from readers who are also creatives who have struggled with that, it's been one of the most impactful ones.
I think I read something similar, but in this concept
Ah,
was, but in this concept were like these creatures, like gremlins that enter like worlds inside books, and they
mm.
eat elements of the story. For example, they eat the slipper of Cinderella and change everything.
Oh, wow. I would love to know what that, because that sounds like something I could even use as like a comp title. Like if you loved this series, you might check out A Story Spun in Scarlet. I love stories that use stories as an element. Like Inkheart and Once Upon a Broken Heart. Just any story where stories play a role in it has always been really special for me. So it was really exciting to get to write one of those stories for myself.
So tell me, what are your plans for the future? Are you planning to go to a signing or something or an event to promote yourself?
I'm trying to do as many as I can. It definitely, between 2020 and then becoming a mom, it definitely has changed the landscape for me in terms of my ability to commit to in-person events.
Your
But
baby is 3 years old.
he's 4 now.
Oh,
Yeah. So we're finally getting to the age where like he can go spend the night at grandparents, which allows me. It was really exciting back in February. I got to do my first ever actually overnight writing event. I went up to Michigan and I attended a novel event. They had a romance book signing fair up in Michigan, and so I got to go to that, and that was really exciting. That really kind of lit the fire for me. I'm like, I want to go to more events. The most exciting thing on the near horizon is actually this Friday, Saturday, the 24th. My friend and I are doing a signing at Barnes and Noble to celebrate. We're both releasing our next novels actually on Friday, the 23rd, and then the 24th we get to go do a signing at Barnes and Noble, which is, that's always the dream, I feel like. And I've been really, really privileged to go to this particular Barnes and Noble for a couple of releases. So that's the thing I'm the most excited about right now.
That's great. Hey, your muse is back.
He's back and licking himself because he has no sense of camera etiquette at all.
If he wants to. Well, in any case, do you have plans for a new series after finishing this one?
I do. I do. I'm actually just this week started solidifying plans for a trilogy set in the same world as Tales of Wonder and Woe, but following a slightly different pattern and publication process. So I'm really excited to explore that. It's been a while since I actually planned on doing a series. So it'll be a fresh challenge, but I'm feeling ready for it. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
That sounds great. So, how do you deal with marketing and stuff like that usually?
It's tough. I feel like in a lot of ways I've tried my hand at so many things, like trying to post, book talks or reels that might go viral, posting carousel things, on all the social media. And I was just talking with another author recently that like there's so many different ways you can do marketing, from like paid ads to, posts on social media to what, newsletter, all that stuff. And that it's really seems like it's about finding your niche, like what you're good at and the best way that reaches your target audience. And so lately I've found that what's really been successful for me with marketing is hopping into like Stuff Your Kindle events, and other collaborations with authors where maybe somebody's doing like a giveaway of 10 epic fantasy books or something like that. The more like people facing type of things I'm finding has actually been the most successful strategy for marketing for me. So this year I've really been focusing on that, and then just trying to figure out what all I can do with Facebook ads and Instagram ads. And so far I've seen some success, some not, but that's the name of the game, right? It's like it changes every day.
So, can you tell us in which platforms we could get your books other than Barron's and Novels, obviously?
Yes. So, I go through the distributor Ingram Spark. So the benefit of that is my print books are almost, everywhere. You can get them on like Walmart.com, Target.com, not typically on store shelves, but through online retailers, you can usually find them. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Indigo, Waterstones, for those who are not in the United States. I know shipping can be crazy. I also do offer signed copies, sometimes even with swag for my shop. And they are also in KU because I know times can be tough. And if you've already got a KU subscription, sometimes it's easier to just read a book that's in there as opposed to paying for a print book. So
I have a question. If you are making big worlds with fantasy, has you ever tried to make one of those book Bibles that has like glossaries of the species, why this part of the world exists, these gems are made of this, these goblins, this is how they look, and you hire maybe an illustrator to make them?
Uh, that having a fully illustrated book Bible is definitely like one of my bucket list items.
Yeah, maybe you know that The Legend of Zelda, they made one recently,
Yes.
something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And the part of the struggle for me with that is a lot of my fantasy worlds, I'm either still building them like Tales of Wonder and Woe, or they're pretty like standard fantasy, like the Star Chaser saga. But I do have a series that I've slowly over the years been working up to releasing that has a lot of fantasy versions of typical like monsters like vampires, werewolves, things like that. And it has such a large cast, such a big world, and so many fantasy monsters that I actually do have my own series Bible for it that I had to consult many, many times when drafting and revising. And one of my dreams for that series is that once I eventually publish it, I would really like to have, that little encyclopedia. Don't know how many pages it would get up to, but, at least 50 pages of illustrated stuff for people to reference and look at that would be its own thing. So that's the dream.
Well, I think the Zelda one has like 70, but yeah.
Yeah. However long it's got to be to fit it all, right?
Exactly. So, can you share with us your social media for people that might be interested in following you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Both of those, I believe, this under the same thing at Renee Dugan Writing. I try to just use that across all platforms to make it easier. I have a small YouTube channel that was mostly author help things, which I haven't posted on there in a long time, but there's still information on there that's useful. And I dabble a little bit on TikTok under author R. Dugan. But if anybody wants to see where I'm the most active and interactive, Instagram is still kind of my platform of choice. So Renee Dugan Writing on Instagram is a great place to find me and the latest updates on my work.
Honestly, I agree. I prefer Instagram over Facebook and TikTok, in my opinion. I think everything's, no, you know, for writers, I think it's easier to interact in Instagram. And the Bookstagram tag is actually quite big compared to the other places.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely fosters a little more community and a little more variety in what you can post with still images versus videos, which I know Facebook is very big on still images and TikTok's very big on videos, but Instagram seems to be the best of both worlds. So as long as it's hanging in there, that's where I'll be.
Do you have a personal website?
I do, reneeduganwriting.com. And that's where you can find my shop, some blog posts. Also, my newsletter is there. And newsletter subscribers get first look at things like upcoming books and behind the scenes on my process. So anybody who's interested in those kind of things, that's a great place to go.
That's great. Well, Renee, I think that's all for now. Thank you so much for joining us today and for everything you told us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was such a blast, and I'm really excited for everything that you guys at Markee Books are doing. Thank you for having me on and reaching out. This has been so awesome.
Yeah, here in Markee Books, we do a lot of things. Websites, covers, even formatting and some other publishing helps, stuff like that. Yeah.
Such good things. Thank you for everything you do for the publishing industry.
Thank you, Renee. Are you planning to start Final Fantasy 16 now?
We'll see. That's the plan. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I actually, just to tell you, it's more depressing than 15.
Yeah, that was, my husband played a little way through it and he was like, he was like, I think you'll like this. He was like, but bring a box of tissues. I'm like, I don't know if I've got the emotional capacity right now with my limited time. I'm like, I might want to invest my time in something a little more lighthearted. So, but we'll see. That PlayStation's calling my name. So I might give in.
Well, thank you, Renee. Have a nice day. And I hope all your plans come true.
All right. Thank you so much, Daniel. Have an amazing day.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye. As an avid reader, Renee always remained inspired and fresh, adding more and more stuff for her own worlds. So always try to supply yourself with new things to learn. She also taught us the important lesson of respecting the creative process. With her example, she learned when to stop and take a break before that will become a problem for you. And that's when you learn when to stop. Well, thank you for joining us today. If you found this episode inspiring, like, subscribe, and share this video. And give Markee Books a try in the link below. Well, have a nice day and see you next week. Bye.